So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Maxx C and how it affects deck building. To break it down, Maxx C is not a card you have to run, like straight up. You don't have to run Maxx C. There's nothing that's going to hinder you if you don't play Maxx C. It's legitimately just fine to do so. But if we specifically are playing a deck that does get like into a really bad spot for against like Maxx C, that is when we will be forced to at least play Ash Blossom and Called by the Grave, which are cards you truly have to play, right? So, don't have Ash Blossom bookmarked, but I don't think I have enough bookmarks for this, so whatever. Ash Blossom, okay. So, at minimum, I think every deck should at least play these 5 cards. And then on top of this, we already know that the best hand trap, just in general, is going to be Infinite Impermanence for a variety of reasons. Just in general, right? So, if we are dealing with, for example, I don't know, let's say normal summon Rosin, our opponent doesn't have any, like, uh, guys to tag out with or anything like that. So, if we Imperm here, we cannot be, hit by Triple Tactics Talent. We cannot be hit by Cult Life Grave. There's only one card generically that counters Infinite Impermanence. So this is very, very noticeable when we're dealing with specifically decks that might have only potentially extenders or no ways to deal with Infinite Impermanence. Like for example, with Fire King now you can like cure and pop your Fire Monster. But let's assume our opponent doesn't have that, or like Vanquish Soul was a bad example too because they have Borger to tag out to deal with Imperm, right? But if we just look at this by itself, technically the only thing you can do, like against Infinite Impermanence in most decks, is just to simply have Crossout and then select Infinite Impermanence as the target, right? Aside from that, most decks don't have a good way to play around Infinite Impermanence or deal with Infinite Impermanence, so this makes this technically a Z tier card. If we look at Maxx C, for example, 1, 2, 3, or 5 counters, and then 1, 2, 3 counters for like Adfolsom Enjoy Spring. And the only card that comes kind of close, I guess, to Infinite Impermanence in terms of like being somewhat uncounterable is Shifter. This is a little bit better because you cannot cross at it. All you can do is hope for a called by, and the odds of this are pathetically low. So, if your opponent has a Shifter, the odds of you also having a called by the grave, the odds of this are it's like what 20% chance for you to have called by just in general. So yeah, not great. And Shifter also has the insanity of being even more impossible to deal with than these cards, right? Because it's literally a lingering floodgate. If we turn 1, activate Shifter, what are you gonna do with called by? Nothing. Your opponent activates Shifter turn 1 and then passes to you, does whatever they do, doesn't super matter. How do you deal with Dimension Shifter's macro effect? With your generics, at least, right? With your non-engine. There's one card in the game that realistically deals with Shifter in this case. Cyframe Gear Godmon. And that might as well be it. I don't think there's anything even remotely reasonable to play aside from that. But also while we're here, Shifter, you can back this up. You can back up Shifter like super hard. So if we run Bestials, just to showcase this, we're getting a little bit sidetracked here, but okay. If we have Shifter, Bestials, so we just grab like literally every Bestial that's still legal. Boom. 6 cards right there. Ghost Bell. 3 more cards right here. So this used to be at 3, by the way. Keep this in mind for like a long period of time. So that was a little bit miserable. Luckily, no one was super running Shifter. There's only like one deck that ran Shifter. The rank 8 deck that liked to go second. So aside from that, nothing really ran Shifter for like the first year of Master Duel. But like when Flu released, yeah, that's when free Shifter really really was bad, you know? But okay. If we open Shifter, what are the odds now of us opening either a Bestial or Ghost Bell? Very high. So yeah, Called By is not like necessarily super good option in this case, right? So yeah, miserable. But yeah, in deck building, Maxx C affects us a little bit, right? It takes some of our main deck slots, but is this that problematic? Like, is it though? Because we could just throw in just whatever generics instead. So Called By you would still play no matter what, right? So instead we could do like this, for example, and just have essentially the same deck, right? So all we do is we just stop playing Ash Blossom and we just go with Solemn Judgment instead. Like we could do something dumb like that. We could just throw in three copies of Droll instead. Is this more innovative to like any of you guys? No, because it's not much of anything to me, right? Like instead of playing Ash Blossom, we can just play Droll now instead, but which is just a floodgate essentially. So same vein as like Shifter, but also annoying in its own way, being not hard once per turn. So we could go like chain Droll, chain Called By, chain Droll again. So Droll still results. You have to pass turn. Not that much different from like what generally happens when you get Maxx C. And of course Droll, uh weaker card than, or no, not weaker, somewhat stronger card than Maxx C if you just consider uh your ways to deal with Droll, right? Versus the ways you have to deal with Maxx C, having like Ash Blossom and Called By. Maxx C is low-key making the game actually somewhat more playable for the going first and second players in different ways, honestly. So if we look at this in a different light, right? Maxx C also has the downside of being a complete, like, arguably brick going first. So if we were to just make a quick sample deck, let's use, I don't know, let's go with Vanquish Soul. Because it's been living in my head rent-free for a while. And we'll just go with 3 of these, 1 of those, 3 of these, 1 of these, 2 of those, 1 of those, 1 of these. And then let's go with, sure, let's go Great Kara. Let's throw in Droll and Lock. Doesn't super matter. Then we still have some slots, so we'll just throw in like mostly whatever. So just assume this is like engine or generics. It doesn't really matter, right? So okay, now if we ever open Maxx C, right? Maxx C, completely dead card in our hand, right? So we're essentially playing our first turn like this with only these 4 cards, right? So we have card 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And then Maxx C, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, assuming we're going first, right? And then here, no Maxx C, we have a much more live hand in general, right? Theory? Well, there's also the aspect, of course, of if we have Ash Blossom, Geospring. Ash Blossom can deal with our opponent's cards on turn 1 as well and do things for us because Maxx C exists, right? So that actually gives a lot more value to Ash Blossom, Geospring. And that's a thing, I guess, right? So with Maxx C in the game, this is live turn 1, so this is stronger. And it's also going to be live turn 2, even if our opponent does not open like the Maxx C for us to kind of trade. And we have infinite impermanence here as well for our next turn, and then we have 3 engine. That's mostly what we're looking at here, right? And then here, same kind of deal. And if these hands are, we're just considering them for like going first hands, Maxx C is just always going to be worse than Ash Blossom, Imperm, or any of these cards, right? Reason being, notably here, we also have to run the cards we need to kind of drop on our opponent turn 2, right? So if we were to do our full combo and then we Maxx C our opponent, right now we already have Ash Blossom, Geospring. So the only card that we can draw into right now in this list is Duel and Lockbird off of our Maxx C. And does this really change much if we Maxx C our opponent on the next turn? Yeah, I don't think it really does, right? Compared to if we just immediately hit our opponent with another negate like Infinite Impermanence, if we opened that instead, right? That would be a lot stronger, or like an effect failure, or just Droll to begin with. Then we wouldn't have to like wait to draw into Droll. How many draws until Droll? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like eight summons, and then our opponent has to search. So, how many summons could that take before we could Droll? Not really known, but yeah. Maxx C not being that good going first actually makes it a much worse card than it seems. Well, yeah, well, yeah, it makes it a much worse card, right? There's also the idea if you're going second and you just drop a Maxx C. There is the idea of what if I had, for example, Infinite Impermanence instead, or if we had Effect Failure instead, right? Our opponent has 3 copies of Ash Blossom Geospring. You cannot Ash Blossom Effect Failure, right? You cannot Ash Blossom Infinite Impermanence or like Ghost Spell or whatever. You can still call by it, but the odds are less in your opponent's favor this way if you were to just be running a different hand trap. The only downside, of course, is like how well, non-generic some hand traps are and how relatively generic Maxx C is. So that is the one upside. Of course, the issue of resolving it's still a thing. But if we were to drop like Ghost Spell against certain decks on certain parts of their combos is turn ending and potentially game winning. Much more so than like Maxx C, for example. So it like depends, and the math probably is skewed not in favor of Maxx C, honestly. If you were to do the math on all the probability, like Maxx C isn't completely like useless. It's not like it does nothing, but it's not like the end all be all or literally the best card in the game. I mean, honestly, if I were to think of the best card in the game, my first thought is going to be Dimension Shifter. Put Dimension Shifter back to 3. See how that goes. It's just going to be completely disgusting, right? And it's not going to be playable, like at all. By that I mean the game. Whereas with Maxx C, the game is clearly playable, right? We can still play the game. There's no issue with that, but you might not like playing against Maxx C or like doing this for your deck building, but you can also argue like how everyone running Ash Blossom in Cult By is good because you always do know your opponent will most likely be playing Ash Blossom and Cult By, and that information and having this makes the games like slightly more predictable in a sort of way, and it also weakens um, the decks in general. So all of those hands, I also just opened Ash Blossom. It could have ran just technically like more engine instead, right? And it wouldn't be super punishable aside from like by a Droll and Lockbird. So that's right. If I want to extremely play around like Droll and Lockbird, I can also run like Fissure. So assume 3 Fissure, 2 Called By. If I were to be psychopathic enough to do that, I could. And Maxx C would not be in the game to punish this, which it can still punish this type of play. So let's assume I have a full combo, but it dies to Droll. I can just heavily play around the Droll and make going second into my deck completely unfun. And the only card that really punishes what I'm thinking of right now, specifically Maxx C. So situational, right? Also, this by forcing people to run like Ash Blossom and Cult By like all the time, it does end up affecting going first decks like a lot. And since people are actually typically running like unlike me, right? A lot of people will be running like Maxx C, Ash Blossom, Geospring, and Cult By Crossout. You're throwing in like what was that? 9 mandatory cards. That's like 1/4 of your deck. Being this non-engine, notably it's non-engine, right? Because if we were to go second without Maxx C and our opponent didn't have to run all that non-engine, that would be just unfun. It is very close to just the idea of just stun once again, right? Like our opponent opens floodgates, they set them, and then it's our turn and we have nothing for them, right? That's kind of the same vibe. So if we were to like full combo, full stop, be able to full send all engine, there are honestly very few hand traps that can deal with that type of thing. That is why we kind of need Maxx C as well. Yeah. So the only other card that could stop this type of situation is just Duel Lockbird or Shifter, pretty much. So I guess it's not the only card, but Duel Lockbird is also more situational because tier limit exists, for example. So Shifter is like closer to the end all be all, which also makes it so that we actually need Shifter in the game somewhat, which is like annoying. It it ex like it's not fun to play against, but these cards actually just balance the game just by existing, which is kind of crazy to think about. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.